Now, please help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker.
We didn't get the right order.
I don't know. Yeah, we do.
Do we have an order?
I don't know any of our speakers tonight. Our first speaker.
Thank you. I'm Zach. I'm an alcoholic. I want to start by saying I'm a type 1 diabetic, so if it looks like I'm shaking up here, it's because of my blood sugar, not because of my crippling fear of public speaking. Okay. So I was born and raised in Southwest Kansas. I had a really great childhood. You know, I had parents that were super supportive of everything I did. You know, people I could always rely on, talk to. I never had to worry about where my next meal was coming from. So all in all, you could say I had a really nice and great childhood. One of the things that did stick out in my childhood that has stuck with me throughout my life is what my therapist described as toxic perfectionism. And that ended up coming out in many different ways, some of that being competitiveness, and I learned that from my parents. So, I, I guess I saw, when I did well, that made my parents happy, and that was a way for me to, get their approval. So at a really young age, all I would want to do is, be first at this and get all A's. And that was something too that, as I was growing up, if I didn't have all A's or I wasn't doing as well as I should be in certain things, I would get punished for it. I'd lose privileges, get to go see my friends. I would lose my car when I was in high school. I'm a senior in high school, and my dad's taking my car, and I'm this is bullshit. So that was one of the things from my childhood that really stuck out and has stuck with me, that I've learned to deal with over the past 4 months and over the past few years of doing this recovery thing. So like I said, I'm from Southwest Kansas, and a lot of the, I guess, culture and norm there is drinking is okay and drinking's cool. And so that was really one of the things that most of our friends did. We didn't have a mall to go to, or we didn't have a professional sports game to go to. We went to the cornfield and drank. So that was a pretty common occurrence. My first encounter with alcohol, I was just about to turn 18. A lot of people might remember Four Locos. So I was fortunate enough to have kind of the nerfed down version of the Four Locos. I didn't get that crazy energy drink one, but still kind of same result. You end up blacked out. You don't really remember much. So let's see. Okay, so this leads me to go into college. For the first attempt, so I went to Kansas State University for a couple of years, and back to that perfectionism thing, I started kind of falling behind in some of my classes. I had a couple C's, and one I knew was going to be an F, and I was terrified to call my parents and tell them hey, I've really messed up, I don't know what I should do. What do you think I should do? Well, before that happened, I have a massive panic attack, and I'm losing my mind, thinking about a million different things a minute. And my solution at that time, because all I knew was what to do, was to drink. And so I'm drinking then, and I start talking to my roommates, and I'm really all over the place, and they're starting to get concerned for me. They're I don't know what's going on with Zach. And then for a couple of weeks it was like that. I finally got up enough courage to tell my parents I wasn't doing very good, and my dad's best advice was you can either keep pushing through the semester, or you can come home now and try to figure out this drinking thing, because it's obviously not working out for you. And at that time I was 19. I didn't want anything. I didn't want to hear it. I can drink. I'm fine. I'm normal. I'm just struggling a little bit in school. But I ended up moving home, continuing college back at the hometown JUCO. But I wasn't solving the problems that were really deep down. I continued to get worse with drinking. I started working in a restaurant, and I had the best job ever for an alcoholic. I was a bartender. So after 8 months of that, I ended up going to my first treatment, but still unwilling. I get drugged there by my parents, and I still was like not willing to admit I was different than anybody else. I had friends that, I thought drank just as much as me, or maybe a little bit less, but that was always a cool thing, like who could drink the most, especially where I was from. So I ended up bouncing around a few different rehabs. Out in Wichita, Kansas, I went to one called Bel Air Recovery, and I ended up getting about 6 months sober. But during that time, I didn't go to AA as much as I should. I had a sponsor for about 2 weeks, and then things ended up falling through with him. So I never really bought into like the AA concept of doing things. And let's see. And that led me back to going to treatment again. After that 6 month period and not really continuing to work on my issues and like working on recovery, I ended up relapsing and going back to treatment. So coming out to Prescott was a pretty big decision for me. I had just gotten back into like a really good university to continue school. I'm going to school to be a teacher. That's the last thing parents want, is a drunk teacher. So I was talking to my dad, and I was like, okay. And I've talked to my therapist too, and she's telling me Prescott, Arizona, and I'm like, all right, that could be, something I should try. And I also thought about just going the full AA route, and I just knew deep down that wasn't the right step for me. So I made the move out to Prescott, and I ended up going to a really great facility out here. I've been there this entire time I've been out here so far. I actually graduate tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you. And one of the first things that they told me to do when I got over was find a sponsor. So when I had the first sponsor back in Wichita, it was really kind of like I kind of rose my hand and said I needed a sponsor, and this guy kind of like picked me out, and so it wasn't really that great. So this time when I got my sponsor, I was just sitting there in the meeting, before the meeting actually, and I was like eavesdropping, on people, like hear if they were cool or not, And I had just gotten done talking to my therapist saying like, hey, I want this guy that's like outdoorsy, like-minded as me, like very goal-oriented, like wants to do like things with his life. And like I hear this guy talking, and I'm like, that's him. And so after the meeting, I went up to him, and the first thing he asked me to do is like, hey, like let's go kayaking tomorrow. And I'm like, deal, like set. This is my sponsor, meant to be. So that was really one of the big steps for like stepping out of my comfort zone, because I'm not one of the people that likes going up to other people and introducing myself to them. And I think one of the big things was like finding a sponsor that I could trust, and you can share things with them that you wouldn't want to share with anybody else in the entire world, and someone that you can relate to. My sponsor got sober the exact same age I did. I thought that was just a super interesting and like cool thing. We're able to go outdoors and do things we both like we go fishing, we get to go kayaking, we've been out riding the Razor around, and like seeing his life in sobriety gives me hope and like ideas for like what I want for my life in sobriety going forward. And then just being involved in helping others is something that he does very well, and that I want to also continue to do whenever I'm able to sponsor. And just being able to like share our experiences with other people, I think is one of the most powerful things like we as addicts can do, because no matter what you say, there's going to be something that stands out to someone else and it can help them. So another one of the things that my sponsor did really early on that I think is super important for people to do in early recovery is talk about the person that you want to be. Right now, talk about the person you want to be in 5 years, talk about the person you want to be in 10 years, and then being able to set goals but not expectations. Goals are important. It's always good to have dreams and hopes alive, but don't put expectations on that, because then that can end up hurting you in the end, because then you have all these expectations that may or may not come true. But there's nothing wrong with having high goals for yourself, and it encourages, growth and not stagnancy whenever you're in sobriety. So one of the things that I was able to do in sobriety, I actually got a 4.0 this semester in school, and that's my first time getting all A's since like 2015. and that was the first time I've been sober, so I think there might be like a correlation there. Um, so my sponsor like really encourages me to like find things I'm passionate and care about. Um, and since day one, I told him I wanted to be a teacher and that I wanted to be able to help kids, and that's something he like really pushes on me to like continue to pursue and continue to work hard at, because that's going to lead me to have a happy, fulfilling life, along with continuing to do things in recovery. I think each day there's 3 things that I try to do every day. That's do one thing for personal growth, do one thing for my growth in sobriety and like recovery, and then do something to help someone else. And I think if you do all 3 of those things each day, you're going to have a pretty full and like fulfilling day. And being like the best version of myself each and every day is something that has been really preached upon to me. Let's see. So I think I guess like coming to AA and like giving this a full like shot was like the best thing that happened to me, because when you're just going like through the motions and kind of just showing up, you're not really gaining anything. Once you're able to like interact and share your story with someone and hear someone else's story and empathize with them, like you can really make that deep down connection that all of us addicts like need to find with one another, because I think addicts are some of like the most special people in the entire world, because no one else has like been through the same things we have been through, and no one else can relate on the same level as other addicts. So I think sharing our stories to as many people as possible, and then also taking time to listen to others, is like one of the coolest experiences you can have in sobriety, because you can like really see like people from all different walks of life all kind of end up in the same general area, and it's not like the best area where we end up until we come to like AA. So I'm just like really grateful for all the people I've encountered in Prescott. I'm grateful for every opportunity I've gotten since I've been here. I've met some of the nicest people in the entire world in this town, and I can't thank the treatment center I'm at, or AA, or my sponsor enough for everything that they've done for me so far. And I look forward to being able to give back to others, and thank you.
All right, let's welcome our next speaker, Mike.
Hi there. Thanks for everybody being here. I'm going to take a minute just to take it all in and get out of my head and into my heart, as Sheryl Crow sings. It's a great song. Anyway, Mike, alcoholic. And about 15 years ago, I first stepped into these rooms. I was mandated by my job to go to a rehab program. At that time, I had 25 years as an air traffic controller and managed to control my drinking through that entire period of time, until the time when one morning when I thought I was able to go to work, and knowing that I could get randomly tested for drugs and alcohol on any given day, I thought I was going to be fine. I just happened to be pulled from position to get tested for alcohol, and I knew I felt a little bit hungover from the night before. It was a Halloween party that I had been to, and there's a lot of heavy drinking, of course, a lot of fun times. And one of the requirements for my job was that you have to stop drinking 8 hours prior to work. And I gave myself 9, thinking, drank quite a bit, I should be fine. Went to work, got tested in the morning, and blew a .10. And my eyes lit up. My manager's eyes were like the size of tennis balls, and he said, I had no idea. And frankly, I didn't either. I didn't think that I was too drunk, not only to work, but not even legal enough to drive to work. So at that time, basically took me into a room, and I thought my career was over. I was within about 3 months of being able to retire. And so I saw all that going out the window. And I thought, well, what they're going to do is just put me through a series of steps and systematically fire me. So I just had to come to that realization that my career was over, and that was it. You know, I made my bed, I had to sleep in it, and I knew, I mean, my entire career was spent covering up to the point where of just ridiculousness. I mean, I wasn't, you know, I was able to do the work, so I could drink moderately at the time. I hadn't crossed over that point where I had to have a drink. I could drink moderately at times. There were times I could, you know, I was a coach for my kids growing up for soccer. I was very healthy at times. And then there were times where it's just, you know, off to the races and, you know, drink to get drunk, drink to cover up feelings, drink to, you know, out of anger, or drink for any number of reasons. But, and of course, it's a progressive disease, so I progressively drank more. So when the times came where I didn't feel like I was able to go to work, I called in sick. And that was, you know, that was something we all did, because, you know, we didn't want to be operating in the control tower knowing that, you know, we're putting lives at risk. So the one thing about that job, just to put some people's minds at ease, is that we were a team. I mean, we absolutely helped each other. So if somebody was having a bad day, they had somebody that was behind their back, always. I mean, that's the only way. We're all human. We make mistakes, and that's what we did for each other. So, and you know, I'm thankful that I had that kind of relationship and that kind of a workplace environment, because, you know, we were all, as my sponsor said, Mike, he had a pretty funny thing. We were talking about that, and he says, well, how can you not be an alcoholic as an air traffic controller? Well, you can. I mean, there were some people that didn't drink, but that was one of the things we did, just to relieve the stress and to, you know, just to relax. I mean, we had some hellacious, you know, work situations and work hours and things, and you just wanted to relax, and that was my excuse. That was a lot of what we did in that field. But anyway, I haven't rehearsed this speech, so I'm going to try to keep it as succinct as possible without going into too many drunk stories and all that kind of thing. But the fact was that I went through a rehab program down in Scottsdale, very intense. You know, my thing was that, you know, they're just trying to fire me. You know, they don't want an alcoholic controller, or somebody who had alcohol problems as a controller in this field. I mean, they don't work well together. So I went through a 30-day program. After that, it was in-house, and then after that, it was a 6-month outpatient. After that, it was another year of continuous monitoring, testing, psychiatric evaluations, therapy, you name it, report cards, everything, you know. And I thought, okay, well, as soon as they check all the boxes, they're going to fire me. Well, and I said, if I can get past, if I don't get fired and I can get past these next 3 months to be able to retire, I'm out of here, because I still felt like I was able to drink or wanted to drink. So after all the programs that I had successfully passed, I got a new sense of freedom, as the big book says. Man, I was able to really deal with a lot of the issues that I had that I didn't even know I had. I mean, the insecurity, the fear of failure, you know, having to control people, not, trying to get it, myself in order actually happened, it occurred, and it was an amazing thing that happened to me when I went through the program and did the steps and had a sponsor. And I thought, I can do this. I can work. They would know, of course, makes sense. They wouldn't let me drink, and I didn't for close to 4 years. And so I worked for an additional 4 years sober, and I enjoyed it. And then things started to change. I mean, there was a lot of things in my career that happened where a lot of us were able to retire after 1981 when Reagan fired 15,000 controllers. I was one that replaced them. And so there were a lot of us that were eligible to retire. And what the FAA did, which I had a resentment for at the time, was they waited to the last minute to hire newcomers or new people. And so when that happened, I was working 6-hour weeks or 6 days a week, 10-hour days, and I was getting burnt out. I was training all the time, and they were the people that I felt weren't qualified to do the job, and yet I had these people that were supposed to have my back working with me, and my resentment started to grow and grow. I got away from the program. I stopped going. I mean, during that 4-year period, I had stopped going to meetings because I felt I was good. I felt comfortable enough with my sobriety that I didn't need that. Really didn't work with a sponsor, didn't have any commitments. So I basically fell away from the program, and it caught up with me. It absolutely caught up with me, and it amazed me when I finally came back in that one of the first meetings I went to said one of our biggest issues is resentment, and that's exactly what took me down. And one day when I had a close call, and I expected some support, and there was nobody there to do that because they had their own ego and said, "You're fine. You'll get some help when I tell you you can get help," with the level of traffic that I was working. And I went home and I drank, and I drank for another 10 years, off and on, moderate, sometimes heavy, and with all that, it snowballed. This is a progressive disease. It absolutely is. After those 4 years, I started at the same level of drinking and to the same degree when I did get drunk as I had 4 years prior. And it actually got worse. I mean, that's a given. It got worse. COVID hit. I had a relationship at the time. I was actually in a relationship where it was a relatively healthy relationship. The gal that I was dating didn't really drink because she just couldn't drink. You give her one drink and she was out. And so I kind of drank along those lines, and I was able to do it. Literally for our 3-year relationship, I could drink, thinking I was getting better, healthier, stronger, with having a healthy relationship and not getting into a position where I put a bottle of beer in front of me and just wanted to drink till I was drunk. I felt like I was getting better, but then there were the times, the same kind of things that happened in the past where relationships or that feeling of agitation, the irritable discontent, and at the time I was going through some marital issues, and of course that's a given considering that I helped to ruin that marriage relationship and ended up having an extramarital affair. Am I at 3? 2 minutes. 2? Okay. Anyway, I came close to suicide. I checked myself into the VA. I had a gun. I was ready to do it. It had gotten to that point where over COVID, I was ready to call it quits. Absolutely. And all I did was drink over that period of COVID. When I couldn't hold down alcohol anymore, and it was so demoralizing and incomprehensible, as they say, I somehow managed to get back into these rooms, and I don't know how, but I remember getting here and then seeing the one person that I remembered from 15 years prior, and she came up to me after the meeting and invited me, Lucy, and invited me to her house for dinner, and said, "Yeah, we have dinner, we have a meeting, come join us." And I felt like I could be a part of this again, and I'm so grateful to be back. Number one, grateful for this program, and Mike, and for all of you that are so much younger and you're here today. I wish the best, and I hope you get it. It took me a long time to get it, but I'm really happy to be back with 9 months, and hope this 24 hours a day, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And let's welcome our last speaker, Rene.
My name's Rene. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Well, I'm not going to start back in the day when I was born, all that stuff, because I started drinking when I was 45 years old. And I started drinking for fun because I was going through divorce, and I was on a dating site called, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's called. My daughter put me on a dating site, and yes, I used to be younger. And anyway, so I started dating, and I had a relationship with a man who owned a winery and in California. And we would go at night when it was closed and drink out of the barrels. I don't know if you've ever had wine out of a barrel. But I think that's the turning point for me, is when I started being obsessed with drinking. I believe that something in my brain changed, and I couldn't stop. I just drank myself to blackouts. I would faint. I would be told the next day what I did. And, a lot of my drinking that was supposed to be fun times weren't really that fun, and it's because I don't remember them. The worst part of the drinking is the relationships that you ruin along the way. I'm a mean drunk. And I fight when I'm drunk. And I was in a relationship with a man who really tried to help me, and he couldn't help me. He had a problem himself, but he really tried to help me. And then I met my nemesis, cocaine. If I had known where to buy it myself, I probably would have done more of it. But that, combined with drinking, was just the ultimate worst thing for me and my family. I did horrible things when I drank, and I said horrible things. I hurt a lot of people. When I was on step 9, I even had to go to Target and apologize to a manager. I had gone into Target with my sippy cup, I call it, full of red wine, and gotten upset with the manager because of the price of an air fryer, and threw my sippy cup of red wine across Target, and it stained and ruined a whole bunch of merchandise. I did things like that all the time. Steve called the cops on me so many times because he didn't know what to do with me. I would sit on him angrily, like a dog, so he wouldn't move. I lost my keys in the toilet, I don't know how many times, at a bar. And, I just did things that I'm embarrassed about when I talk about it. That was my whole issue with having to talk to you tonight, is to bring up all of those embarrassing and think about all those embarrassing moments in my life. But I'm going to tell you this. It's not like that now. I lost my son to suicide. And I now celebrate life. He committed suicide, and that is one of the most selfish acts that you can commit. It's just so selfish. He must have been so lonely. So when I hear a lot of people speak about being suicidal, my heart just goes to you, and I think you're so lonely, and I want to help you. I did get COVID. I was sick. I was in the hospital. But even when I got out of the hospital, I drank. One morning I woke up and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I just don't know what happened. All I know is that it had to have been the act of a higher power that put me in a lift and brought me to a treatment center in Mesa. Very intense treatment for 105 days. But even in that car ride, in the lift, I drank my sippy cup of wine. I'm almost at a year sober, and I celebrate every single day being sober. I never mourned my son correctly, so I am mourning him now as a sober woman and mother. I fought from day one treatment and AA and help and therapy. I fought it from day one. I kicked and I screamed and I yelled, and you can ask anybody at any of the treatment centers, the two I were at. And Compass was patient with me. It wasn't until I just gave in to AA to do the things that I was told to do so that I could get better. That's when I got better. I trusted in my higher power. One day I just got on my knees, and I don't know what happened to this day, but I just got on my knees and I just screamed and I prayed, and I just asked for help, and it came to me. Now, there was a very big turning point in all of this, and it was when we took a rock and we threw it in the lake, and I thought it was so stupid. And I told I told Lynn, I go, "You are a mean lady. You making me do this." And she was a mean lady making me do this. But that was a turning point for me, grieving with my son and getting better. It really was. I will forever be thankful to her for that. So what I want to tell all the new ones out there is that every day, it is a cliche, one day at a time, but it is really, really one day at a time. I wake up in the morning and I have a little ritual I do, but there are so many joyous times during the day. I'm not happy all the time. I'm a crabby. You can ask any of my roommates I've had. I am the biggest crab in the morning and so mean in the morning. And I can be very, very hard to get along with. And my addictive behavior comes out all the time. But the difference is I realize it and I apologize for it. So the new people out there, there are joyous moments in your day when you're sober. Everything you do is so much better when you're sober than when you're drunk. Just like standing up here, we were talking about, this is the first time I've done this sober. I've always had to drink to do something like this. I've always had to drink to do anything. And today I don't have to drink, and I'm happy. And my life, I have a great job. I have so many sober friends that come to my rescue when I need someone to come to my rescue. I'm in love with my life right now, and it makes me really nervous because I've never felt this way. So I'm saying I'm thankful for being an alcoholic. I'm thankful for being an alcoholic because I know more about myself, and I'm happier than I've ever been in my whole life. So just give in to the program. It does work. You know, it does work. Thank you.